In February 2025, a unique trial commenced. The biggest child abuser in France was put on the defendant's bench, and the testimonies that have already started to be collected do nothing but increase the horror. The cross-accusations that are taking place in the last hours reveal a network of complicity, police negligence, and a family tree stained with cruel and perverse acts. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. How was this individual discovered, who today faces a laughable sentence of 20 years for abusing more than 300 minors? Why are the victims convinced that everything could have been avoided if someone in their environment had paid attention? What was the path that investigators had to follow to unveil the terrible secrets that remained hidden since the 80s? What did the diaries found in the abuser's house say? Why was the man already in prison when this bomb exploded? Why was he serving a sentence? Well, to try to answer these and other questions, we are going to delve into the dark case of Joël Lescournec, the greatest French pedophile. Before we begin, it's necessary to note that this case is happening now, so some details may change once the trial is over. If you want us to do a second part, talking about the verdict, about how all this was resolved, which at the time of recording this video we still don't know, write trial in the comments. If more than 200 people comment trial, we will do a second part. If not, we leave it here. Please interact with the videos by liking, commenting, etc. This helps YouTube understand your interest and recommend more similar content. So even if it's just a dot or anything, it helps YouTube understand that you want them to recommend more videos to you. Well, nothing more to say. Let's get started. A respected doctor. On December 3rd, 1950, who is considered one of the greatest French monsters, was born in Paris. The boy, baptized Joël Lescournec, was raised in a modest middle-class family and spent a childhood in which he showed no major problems adapting and complying with the environment's guidelines. Joël was quiet but ambitious, and sooner rather than later, he managed to earn the respect of teachers and peers. No one imagined that the little boy was suffering terrible abuse at home. That fact would only be known 70 years later. Let's dive into the topic without delay. In the meantime, it's enough for us to know that the young man set out to become a surgeon. He began a career often characterized by complexity. Again, he received the approval of his superiors, and once again great success was predicted for him. Joël was persistent, intuitive, and seemed to have a clear goal. He used to speak warmly, and despite spending hours locked up reading academic manuals, he never missed an opportunity to go out and have fun. That's how he met in 1974 who would become his wife and the mother of his 3 children. Marie France, a nursing assistant, and him quickly developed chemistry. By the time Joël started his internship at the University Hospital of Nantes, they were already an established family and hungry for progress. The man spent his days off buying fiction books and listening to classical music, a genre for which he professed a love that bordered on obsession. He also began to dream of owning his own home, something that began to materialize with more and more new jobs. His resume featured numerous special mentions and medals. Along with the recognition came some raises, and after some sacrifices and years of saving, the Lescournec were able to move to a spacious place, and only theirs. Settled in a new neighborhood, they never had problems with the neighbors, and during the holidays they avoided any kind of conflict with their relatives. Always an advocate for a moderate and committed lifestyle, Joël continued to keep up with his work routine, updating his knowledge and participating in prominent conferences. He was part of teams with a long history and became an eminence in everything related to digestive and abdominal surgery. He had taken a break from practicing, but tried to minimize the significance of what occurred during that time. Why? That's another mystery we'll reveal soon. Newly graduated surgeons did not hesitate to consult him, and patients from various parts of the world referred to him with affection and admiration. The social mask that the subject had built to interact with others was impeccable. For most of those who knew him, he was an impeccable person, a hard-working family man, and a beloved husband. When he turned 60, there were many calls and messages of affection he received. However, he would soon commit a serious crime, which would be the starting point for more and more atrocities to emerge. From one second to another, the house of cards he had built collapsed and was visible to everyone. The evil that lived within him. The horror begins to emerge. In April of 2017, a 6-year-old girl living in Yonsak told her parents something that left them dismayed. With hesitation and tears, the girl said she had seen her older male neighbor while in the yard. The man had greeted her amiably and had given her a huge smile. Then, when she had also smiled, he had proceeded to show her his genitals. Before the little one could do anything, the man had approached to touch her inappropriately, then he had masturbated. The story was horrendous and the child's parents didn't waste a second. They went to the police station and made the corresponding report. Everyone was greatly surprised when it was discovered that the family's neighbor, the elderly abuser, was none other than Joel him. After several studies confirmed that the minor had indeed been touched by the man, a search was conducted at the doctor's house on May 2nd, 66 years old, who used to greet everyone with a friendly gesture and had never had a problem with anyone. At first, many wanted to believe it was a mistake. There were those who tried to suggest that the girl must be wrong and making things up. No one expected that raid to become the cornerstone of a case that gets more twisted every day. While touring the Lescournec's home, the agents noticed that one of the rooms had a false floor. When they removed the boards, they found a variety of sex toys, wigs, and dildos, but also hard drives, with more than 300,000 images and 600 video files showing acts of pedophilia. As if there was any doubt, alongside all of this, already incriminating in itself, intimate diaries appeared where the doctor detailed the abuses he committed. Analyzing these brutal lines, the investigators were astounded to discover that Joel had abused many of his patients, most of them minors. He recorded the name, address, and phone number of each victim. Beneath all this information, he had recorded what he had done to each of them while they were unconscious in the operating room. The first note dated back to 1980, when Joel was 30 years old. The last one dated back to 2014. A quick comparison of the information showed that, indeed, those people mentioned in Joel's journals had been admitted to the places where he had worked throughout all this time. This meant that the journals were not some kind of feverish fantasy. They were a detailed and repulsive log that exposed a being who evidently was not who he claimed to be. And that was just the beginning, because the outrage only grew when it was learned that the alarm had already been raised in 2004. But everyone had decided to ignore this case. The background. While a case was being initiated against Joel for the abuse of his neighbor, the detectives rolled up their sleeves and got to work. The first thing they discovered was that the doctor didn't have as clean a record as everyone thought. In fact, he had spent 4 months in jail in 2005 and had to pay a fine of over $10,000 that was a champion. A chapter of his life that he never talked about with anyone and that few knew about. Even the limited number of people who knew he had been behind bars did not come to know the real reasons for the confinement. It all started with a call the Federal Bureau of Investigation made to the French authorities in 2004. In it, they informed them that one of their citizens had used his credit card to purchase a video on the deep web. And it wasn't just any video, it was a video in which a minor was being abused. The citizen in question was Joel. The man said he was remorseful and assured that while he had given in to the impulse to watch child abuse, he had never committed one. He claimed with his head held high that he was ready to become a better person. The trial for that case took place months later and resulted in the recently mentioned sentence. In those years, the authorities had the opportunity to stop a person who had been doing atrocious things for over 20 years, to the children who had the misfortune of being attended to by him. And that wasn't the worst part. In any case, the fact that Joel managed to avoid being discovered can be attributed to his tricks and a bit of luck. What is inexplicable is that when the surgeon was again free, he found no impediment to continue working where he did. That is, he continued to be in contact with minors who woke up from surgeries without knowing that when they were under the effects of anesthesia, they were abused. At that time, Marie-France separated from Joel. Did anyone ask if she knew what her husband was doing? Was there never any suspicion of their testimonies? We don't know. Yes, we know that today the woman is in a delicate condition, given that although she remains free, many assure that she will soon be arrested. In 2006, a psychiatrist who was a colleague of Joel at some hospitals connected some dots, and he was perplexed to confirm that the man was the same one who had been convicted less than a year ago. Without hesitation, he submitted a report to the higher-ups, considering that the precedent was serious enough to be taken into account. If until that moment there had been an administrative slip-up on the part of the hospital, it could have been corrected thanks to this psychiatrist's report. Indeed, a precedent like the one Joel had is a determining factor for being able or not to work with minors. However, no one followed up on the report, no preventive measures were taken, nor was there increased control over the individual. Everyone turned a blind eye. Joel seemed destined to get away with it, and for over 10 years he kept doing so. When his secret was safe again, he lifted the false floor of the house, took out his diary, and continued recording the cruelties he was committing. The agents who now had the case couldn't quite understand how that man had gone unpunished for so long. They also knew that proving the crimes he had committed against people who didn't even know they had been abused was a challenge. It was going to be difficult. So they prioritized opening a case that could finally immobilize him. Basically, they needed to buy time with easily verifiable cases, and to their horror they had no trouble finding them. First trial. The first trial against Joël Scouarnec took place in March of 2020. To the accusation of the family of his 6-year-old neighbor, charges for sexual assault against 3 other minors were added, 2 of his nieces and a hospital patient. His nieces had been abused in the 80s and the patient in the 90s. This time the situation gained more publicity, and it became public knowledge what the psychological experts said about the accused, whom they described as a human being without the possibility of empathy, and almost proud to identify as an exhibitionist, bowler, ursado, masochist, and pedophile. At that time, Joel's defense argument was also made known. He claimed the alleged abuses never occurred as he had never penetrated anyone. He had touched children on their genitals, had made the children touch him, and even forced them to perform oral sex. But he was convinced that, since there was no sexual relationship with penetration, he had done nothing wrong, as suggested. He even went so far as to say that one of his underage nieces had seduced him. The man's identity was revealed, but circumstances turned in his favor once more. While the prosecutors were sure they were cornering the subject, the parents of his nieces themselves mentioned that they were willing to forgive him if Joel agreed to undergo therapy. They were even willing to negotiate with him to reduce his sentence. This enraged the nieces and the family of the 6-year-old girl. From that moment on, they decided to turn to the press and point against a kind of family mafia. They feared that there would be a shield around the surgeon, and he would manage to escape from the hands of the law again. Due to the complainant's conviction, the media scrutinized the events more closely. The public made themselves heard and spontaneously supported the victims with marches and banners. At the end of 2020, the squad was sentenced to 15 years in jail. Those who continued to analyze their intimate diaries had for the first time the time margin they needed to delve into the oldest cases. Such investigation would take no less than 4 years. 4 years in which it was corroborated that the abuses perpetrated by the surgeon reached almost 300. And that's how our story comes back to the beginning. New cases. The process of revealing what had happened 40 years ago was complex in several ways. The main cause was that, as we said, these were abused children who were now adults and did not know what had happened to them. It was necessary to be delicate. Investigators found that Joel's victims shared a similar pattern. They developed traumas, panic attacks, or other pathologies they believed were unjustified over time. Many had sought medical help for unexplained insomnia, phobias, or obsessions, searching for answers. When they were informed that they were on a pedophile's list, their world fell apart, but many things also began to make sense. Upon seeing the photos of Joel, some of those children, now turned into adults, admitted to having a very fleeting memory of him and the moment he had attended to them. Others couldn't help but freeze in horror upon coming across that face that their subconscious had spent years hiding. Specialists are assessing the chance that some of these people may have been abused in a very deep state of anesthesia, while others are likely to have been attacked in a sort of wakefulness. So they developed a more direct connection with the abuse itself and its consequences. By April of 2024, they had found 312 victims. The statute of limitations meant that many of them could not press charges. At that moment, a new case was opened with charges for the violation of 299 minors, 158 boys and 141 girls. It is these people who today, according to their lawyers, seek to regain a bit of dignity, humanity, and above all, consideration from justice. The anticipated trial took effect in February of 2025, and controversies did not take long to arise. Everything that has been said so far. One of the first to testify in the new trial against Joel was his own brother, who did not hesitate to say that the man should die in prison for what he had done to society. In turn, the most valuable part of his testimony was what he said about Marie-France. First, he accused her of wanting her husband for his money, of having slept with her sister's first husband, of having had a lover, and even of having made advances towards him. Then he went a step further. His exact words were, "Is there a person who could have gotten Joel arrested all these years?" His wife. She was aware of her husband's activities and did nothing. "Is Marie-France a woman you can trust, or is she a cover-up? Has she always been a cover-up, or is she another victim of Joel?" To try to answer this, there is an entry from Joel's diary that seems revealing. It is dated 1996, and in it the sergeant claims, he is in crisis because his wife discovered him and asked him to get treatment. We don't know if the writing is true to what happened. We also can't know if he promised his wife things that he then didn't do. We do know what Marie-France said. When she sat down in the interrogation seat, the woman presented herself as unwilling to talk and wearing a face mask. Although she was elusive and contradictory, she ended up earning the antipathy of the room. When she questioned and asked the court if there couldn't be a chance that some children found pleasure in being abused. In the face of widespread indignation, she said that everything was confusing for her, since she had also been abused as a child. The confession of her own abuse was not the only one that was heard. When Joel's children took the stand, they hinted at a family tree with disturbing roots. The doctor's eldest son reported that he was sexually assaulted by his grandfather, Scouarnec's father, when he was between 5 and 10 years old. When asked if the surgeon was also abused by his own father, he replied, "I think so, but he always told me no." Apparently, Joel's father also had problems with alcohol and episodes of zoophilia. After years of revelations, the accused son believes his father has a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality. A subject with a double personality who knows how to hide his dark side very well. The second of the surgeon's children agreed on this, claiming that Joel had always been a good father. However, he stressed that he had stopped communicating with him, preferring to remember him that way. An 80-year-old Frenchman who claimed to be Joel's best friend and his father's former best friend also sparked several controversies. This individual appeared aggressive towards the lawyers and frivolous regarding the victims, implying that he never saw Joel seducing a minor. So the matter was none of his business. Then, upon seeing the photos of the abused children, he stated that he couldn't go through life crying over everything that happened to others. He called the case a matter of trousers and admitted that he had wanted to have relations with Joel all his life, but the other one didn't like men. The defendant soon disavowed his friend's words and on his lawyer's advice declared, "You are my friend and you will continue to be. But I must tell you that I have been deeply impacted by what you said about all those people that I have assaulted and hurt because of my actions. All of this was and will continue to be observed by Joel's victims, who are in a room adjacent to the room where the trial is taking place. Until June 6th, there will be no verdict, and in the meantime, the surgeon who was once so respected. For now, he's only visited in jail by his wife and the friend with whom he had a conflict." Cases like this once again draw attention to the way in which evil often manages to take control of the situation due to a series of unfortunate negligences. This also makes it clear that many pacts of silence still persist, trying to keep abused people away from justice. Reversing that horrific path seems hard, but not impossible. Sometimes, As we saw in this case, the truth takes decades to emerge. What else will we know about Joel's case? Will his wife's role finally be revealed? Will his friend show up again? What will the victims say when it's their turn to tell their experience? And they have to see for the first time in a long time that man who hurt them in a way that they are just beginning to understand? All of this will be revealed in the following months, so if you are interested in knowing more about this aberrant case, don't forget to comment with the word trial